Kagoshima, Japan, 1868. A young Ronin named Kenji sat staring at his sword, unable to move, not paralyzed, not injured, just frozen. He'd been sitting there for 3 hours, knowing exactly what he needed to do, unable to do it. Meanwhile, Saigo Takamori led armies, reformed governments, trained thousands of warriors, wrote philosophy, and never hesitated. The last true samurai of Japan, they called him. A man who acted while others debated. A man who moved while others froze. How? Here's what nobody tells you. Procrastination isn't about time management. It's about being trapped between two deaths. Kenji was 24 when he became a Ronin. His master had died during the Civil War, leaving him with skills but no purpose, discipline but no direction. He knew he should find a new path, start a dojo, teach the next generation. He had the knowledge, he had the talent, but every morning he'd wake up with intentions and go to bed with excuses. Not tomorrow, not ready, not the right time, not good enough yet. The samurai who couldn't act was dying twice, once in reality, once in his own eyes. He wasn't lazy. That's the cruel part. He'd train for hours, maintain his equipment, study the old texts. But when it came to the decisions that mattered, the actions that would change his life, he froze. It was like his body refused the commands his mind gave. His younger brother asked one night, "Why don't you just do it?" Kenji had no answer. How do you explain that you're terrified of the thing you want most? How do you admit that inaction feels safer than failure? 3 times he'd planned to open a small dojo. 3 times he'd found reasons to delay. The location wasn't perfect. He needed more students first. The economy was unstable. Each excuse felt logical in the moment. Each one was a slow poison. By his 3rd year as a Ronin, Kenji had become expert at one thing, justifying why today wasn't the day. He was building a prison, one postponed decision at a time. That winter, a traveling merchant told him about a man in the southern provinces, Saigo Takamori, a warrior who had commanded armies during the Meiji Restoration, a philosopher who had voluntarily walked away from power, a teacher who transformed hesitant men into forces of nature. "They say he never delays," the merchant said. "They say he's mastered something the old samurai called the way of no retreat." Kenji felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not hope, not quite, but curiosity sharp enough to cut through the fog. The journey south took 2 weeks. Twice Kenji almost turned back. What would a man like Saigo want with a frozen Ronin? But something pulled him forward, maybe desperation, maybe the last ember of who he used to be. When he arrived at the compound in the mountains, he found not a palace but a simple training ground. 30 men, all ages, all backgrounds, moving with unified purpose. No hesitation, no debate. Just action flowing like water. Saigo appeared at sunset, about 45 years old. Broad shoulders, scars visible on his hands, eyes that seemed to see past your words into your bones. He didn't ask why Kenji had come. He simply said, "You're here because you've forgotten how to move forward. You think it's fear of failure. It's not. It's fear of commitment." Kenji felt his throat tighten. This stranger had named the thing he couldn't name himself. They sat in Saigo's study, sparse room. One scroll on the wall, ink brush, nothing else. Saigo picked up a small wooden block, placed it on the table between them. "Tell me, Kenji, why do you delay?" Kenji started with the excuses he'd perfected. "Not ready, not good enough. Need more preparation." Saigo let him finish. Then he picked up the wooden block and placed it on the edge of the table. "This is you, balanced, safe, comfortable." He pushed it slightly. "This is where you want to be." The block teetered, almost fell, stayed balanced. "The problem isn't that you don't know what to do. The problem is you've given yourself the option to wait. As long as safety exists, you'll choose it, every time." Saigo leaned back. "During the Civil War, I watched thousands of men. The brave ones, the cowardly ones. You know what I learned. Courage isn't the opposite of fear. Movement is. A coward who acts defeats a warrior who freezes. But most men never understand this. They think procrastination is about managing time better, setting better goals, finding motivation. They're fighting the wrong battle. Kenji felt the words land like stones in his chest. Then what is the battle? Saigo stood, walked to the scroll on the wall. It showed a single character in bold brushstrokes. She. Death. This is the first principle of the Ronin technique. To kill procrastination, you must understand what the old warriors knew. There are two kinds of death. The first is physical, inevitable someday. The second is spiritual. It happens the moment you choose safety over purpose. Most men fear the first death so much they guarantee the second. Kenji stared at the character. I don't want to die without having lived. Then stop choosing to, Saigo said quietly. He returned to the table, moved the wooden block to the very edge. You're balanced between two deaths. Physical death if you risk everything and fail. Spiritual death if you never risk at all. As long as you can stay balanced, you will. That's human nature. You'll postpone, delay, wait for certainty that never comes. So the Ronin technique is simple. Remove the option of balance. Make delay more dangerous than action. Kenji felt his pulse quicken. How? Saigo sat across from him again. There's a Chinese military concept. Sun Tzu wrote about it. CID. Death ground. When you place an army on death ground, ground where there's no retreat, no escape, only forward or death, men who were cowards become heroes. Not because they found courage. Because hesitation became more lethal than action. The great generals understood this. The great warriors understood this. And you're going to learn it now. Tomorrow morning, Saigo continued, you're going to stand before my 30 students and announce what you've been delaying. You're going to tell them the exact action you're committing to. Not someday. Not when you're ready. You're going to give them a date. 2 weeks from today. And you're going to invite them to witness whether you kept your word or broke it. Kenji felt panic flood his veins. But the first I'm not ready. What if I fail? What if Saigo raised a hand? Stop. Listen to yourself. Every word is a prayer to safety. Every question is a request for escape. No, you're on death ground now. Spiritual death if you retreat. Public shame if you freeze. The only direction that doesn't destroy you is forward. That night, Kenji couldn't sleep. His mind generated 1,000 reasons why this was reckless, stupid, unfair. But underneath the noise, something else stirred. A memory of who he'd been before fear had taught him to pause. A young samurai who acted because action was the only honorable path. That version of himself felt impossibly distant now. Like a person he'd read about but never met. The next morning, Saigo assembled the students. 30 pairs of eyes turned to Kenji. Saigo gestured. Speak. Kenji's mouth went dry. My name is Kenji. I am a Ronin. For 3 years I have delayed opening a dojo because I told myself I wasn't ready. That ends today. 2 weeks from now, I will teach my first class. In this village. Whether 5 students come or none. Whether the first am ready or not, I'm placing myself on death ground. Hesitation is no longer an option. The words hung in the air. Several students nodded. One older man smiled slightly. Saigo simply said, witnessed. Now you understand the first weapon. You've removed retreat, but that's not enough. Most men place themselves on death ground and still find ways to sabotage. They act, but they act half-hearted. They move, but they move without presence. So you need the second weapon. Come. They walked to the training yard. Saigo handed Kenji a wooden sword. Strike that post. Kenji struck it. Adequate technique, no power. Again. Kenji struck harder. Better. Now again. But this time, I want you to do something different. Before you strike, I want you to eliminate every thought about what happens after. No thought of success. No thought of failure. No thought of who's watching. No thought of whether you're good enough. Only this breath. Only this moment. Only this strike. Nothing else exists. Strike, Kenji breathed. Struck. The impact resonated differently. Saigo nodded. That's the second principle. Sanshin, remaining mind. But not the way most people understand it. Most people think it means awareness of surroundings. It means more than that. It means complete commitment to the present action without attachment to outcomes. You strike not to succeed, not to impress, not to prove. You strike because striking is the only thing in the universe. When you remove outcome attachment, you remove the fear that creates procrastination. For the next week, Saigo drilled Kenji on this piece. Every action performed as if it were the only action that existed. Eating breakfast without thinking about lunch. Cleaning his room without thinking about the next task. Writing a single letter without worrying if the words were perfect. It sounds simple. It was agonizing. Kenji's mind had spent years in the future, in hypotheticals, in what-ifs. Bringing it into the present felt like dragging a terrified animal. But something started to shift. The weight in his chest, the one that had lived there for 3 years, began to lighten. Not because his circumstances had changed, because he'd stopped carrying the future and the past into every moment. Saigo watched him during training one afternoon and said, "You're starting to understand. Procrastination isn't about the future. It's about corrupting the present with fears that don't exist yet. When you're fully here, delay becomes impossible." 10 days in, Kenji hit a wall. He'd secured a small building for the dojo. He'd prepared basic training materials. He'd committed publicly, but the terror returned like a flood. What if no students came? What if he failed in front of everyone? What if he proved that his delay had been wisdom, not cowardice? He found Saigo near the evening fire. "I don't think I can do this." The words came out like a confession. Saigo didn't look surprised, didn't look disappointed. He simply asked, "What are you afraid of? Failing? Wasting everyone's time? Proving the first I'm not good enough?" Saigo poked the fire. "Good. Those fears are honest. Now let me ask you something else. If you fail, if 0 students come, if you prove you're not ready, what actually happens?" Kenji thought. "I'd be humiliated. I'd have wasted resources. I'd confirm my worst beliefs about myself." "And then what?" Saigo pressed. "Then the first did." Kenji paused. "Then the first did try again. Or the first did find another path. I wouldn't die." "Exactly," Saigo said. "You wouldn't die. The thing you're terrified of, absolute worst case, is survivable. But the thing you're guaranteeing through delay, spiritual death, the slow murder of your potential, that's not survivable. You survive it, but you don't live it. So you have a choice. Risk temporary humiliation and possible failure, or guarantee permanent regret. Which death do you choose?" Kenji sat with that. The fire crackled. He realized something he'd never seen clearly before. Procrastination had felt like self-protection, but it was actually self-destruction in slow motion. Every day he delayed was a day he chose against himself. Every excuse was a small betrayal. He'd been so afraid of failing that he'd guaranteed failure of a worse kind. The failure to try. Saigo was right. He'd been balanced between 2 deaths, and balance was the cruelest option. "I choose forward," Kenji said quietly. "Not because I'm not afraid, but because staying here is worse than any failure out there." Saigo nodded. "Then you've learned the third principle, acceptance of mortality, not physical mortality. The mortality of the self that needs certainty, approval, guaranteed success. That self has to die for the warrior to be born. You're killing it right now. This is the painful part. The part most people avoid forever." The night before the dojo opening, Kenji didn't sleep. Not from anxiety this time, from readiness. He'd removed retreat. He'd committed to the present. He'd accepted that the self who needed guarantees had to die. There was nothing left to do but act. At dawn, he walked to the small building he'd secured. Empty room, wooden floor, morning light through the windows. He set up the training space, laid out equipment, Waited. 7 a.m. came. The committed time. Kenji stood at the front of the empty room and began. He taught the opening kata to the silence, explained principles to the air, demonstrated strikes to no one. If this is all there is, he thought, I am still a teacher teaching. 20 minutes in, the door opened. A young boy, maybe 12, stepped inside, bowed. May the first learn. Kenji bowed back, yes. By the end of the first hour, 3 students had arrived. By the end of the week, 8. By the end of the month, 15. But the number didn't matter the way Kenji thought it would. What mattered was that he'd acted would. He'd moved from death ground toward life. He'd killed the part of himself that would wait forever for perfect conditions. That execution was the real victory. 6 months later, Saigo visited the dojo, watched Kenji teach a class of 20 students. Afterward, they sat in the small office. You've changed, Saigo observed. Not just your dojo. You. Kenji nodded. I used to think procrastination was about time. It's not. It's about identity. I was someone who delayed. I had to kill that person to become someone who acts. Saigo smiled. That's the secret the old Ronin knew. The technique isn't a trick. It's a transformation. You don't overcome procrastination. You execute the self who procrastinate. They talked about the principles. Death ground removes retreat. Present moment commitment removes fear of outcome. Acceptance of mortality removes the need for certainty. Together, they create something unstoppable. Not because you're never afraid, but because delay becomes more terrifying than action. Saigo stood to leave. There's one more thing you need to know. The technique isn't one time. You'll face new death grounds, new fears, new versions of yourself that want to delay. So the practice is eternal. Every day you choose spiritual death or spiritual life, hesitation or movement. The warrior's path isn't reaching a destination. It's choosing the direction every single morning. Years later, Kenji's dojo had become one of the most respected in the region. Not because of his technique, because of his teaching. He had a way of seeing when students were trapped between 2 deaths, a way of pushing them onto death ground, a way of teaching them that procrastination isn't a time problem. It's an identity problem. An identity can be executed. One afternoon, a young woman arrived, about 26 years old. Nervous eyes. She'd been planning to start a business for 4 years. Had all the knowledge, all the preparation. None of the action. Kenji listened to her story and recognized every word. He'd spoken those same sentences once. Made those same excuses. Lived in that same prison. He placed a small wooden block on the table between them. This is you, balanced between 2 deaths. As long as you can stay balanced, you will. But the first I'm going to offer you something dangerous. A way out. But it requires you to volunteer for death ground. It requires you to kill the version of yourself that needs certainty. Are you willing? The young woman looked at the block, looked at Kenji. Her hands were shaking, but she nodded. Yes, I'm tired of dying slowly. I want to live. Good, Kenji said. Then tomorrow you're going to stand before my students and announce your commitment. You're going to set a date, and you're going to remove your own retreat. Welcome to Death Ground. Welcome to the only place where procrastination dies. The young woman's eyes widened. But before she could protest, before she could generate the familiar questions, Kenji raised a hand. Stop. Listen to yourself. Every word is a prayer to safety. Every question is a request for escape. No. The only direction that doesn't destroy you is forward. Now let me ask you something. You've made it this far. You've watched this story. That means you're trapped somewhere between 2 deaths. Some decision you know you need to make. Some action you've been delaying. Some version of yourself you've been too afraid to execute. So the first I'm going to give you the same choice Saigo gave me. You can stay balanced, comfortable, safe, dying spiritually 1 postponed day at a time. Or you can volunteer for death ground day at a time. Here's your death ground. Choose one action you've been delaying. Not the biggest one, not the scariest one. Just one. And commit to it publicly, right now. In the comments below, write the specific action. Write the specific date you'll complete it by. 2 weeks maximum, make it witnessed. Once you write it, you've removed your retreat. You're on death ground. Hesitation becomes more dangerous than action. Spiritual death becomes more terrifying than temporary failure. This isn't motivation. This is execution. You're killing the self who delays. You're becoming the self who acts. The Ronin technique isn't about managing your time better. It's about removing time as an option. It's about making delay impossible. It's about understanding that procrastination isn't laziness. It's choosing spiritual death over spiritual life. Every single day. So choose. Write your commitment below. Set your date and remove your retreat. Or close this video and return to balance. But know this, every day you stay balanced is a day you choose against yourself. Every excuse is a small betrayal. You're not protecting yourself. You're destroying yourself in slow motion. The question isn't whether you're afraid. The question is which death you choose. The death of the self who needs certainty, or the death of the self who could have lived. Death ground is waiting. The only question is whether you're brave enough to stand on it. You need tries. And you